Good morning, world. I'm Steve Rao, the host of Pod TV World Edition. And on Pod TV World Edition, we bring you great news from around the world, talk about sustainable innovations, and what we can do. Every Friday, we talk about building back better. How do we build back better? And what is our playbook to develop a strong United States and also world as we deal with the COVID pandemic? Today, I want to talk about our follow up on our discussion of the disruption of American democracy, how the ouster of Liz Cheney, which her successor will be voted on today, and it's rumored to be Congresswoman Stepanik, what it means for American democracy. But yesterday, I talked about how this is a positive development because it fights extremism in our political system, the fringes of each party driving political debate in this country. Now, we have an example in North Carolina of extremism, or at least right wing conservative ideas that don't really seem to be in reality or in line with the current state of events going on in our nation. The Republicans in North Carolina, and this has made national AP news, have proposed a bill called the Ensuring Dignity and Non-Discrimination in Schools. It basically limits what teachers can say in North Carolina about race and whether we have racism in our schools. Now, in light of all of the things going on with George Floyd, the racial turmoil, the proof that there's been redlining and gentrification in our country, that 13% of black men are in prisons, that 40% only of black Americans only own homes compared to 75% of whites, and the systemic racial bias which we're seeing in a number of police departments around the country, black men being shot for no apparent reason on stops and searches, and understanding that there's racial bias. And so I just want to highlight some of the things that this bill says, and then we're going to have a discussion about what this means for extremism in America. Now, this bill basically says that schools cannot promote one race or sex that is inherently superior to another race or sex. So they cannot promote one race or sex over another. An individual solely by the virtue of his or her race or sex is inherently racist. They cannot promote that, sexist or oppressive. An individual should be discriminated against or receive adverse treatment solely or partly because of his or her race. So it's limiting promoting that concept. It's limiting promoting that an individual's moral character is determined by his race or sex. It also says that we cannot promote that an individual solely by virtue of his race or sex bears responsibility for actions committed in the past by other members of the race or sex. And that the belief that the United States is a meritocracy is racist or sexist, or was created by members of a particular race or sex to oppress members of another race or sex. So this bill was scheduled for a vote, and I'm not sure, I think it did pass, but the governor will most likely veto this bill in North Carolina. We have a Democratic governor, and he can veto the legislation. And this bill, before I close out my monologue, many Democrats, including Representative Galliard, has spoke against it and says that it's just a bill that doesn't make sense. And although Secretary Truitt, the state superintendent of education, says it's a common sense bill, and that Speaker Moore says it's taking an aim at critical race theory. He says Catherine Truitt, our superintendent, says it's a common sense bill that provides reasonable expectations for the kind of civil discourse we want our children to have, and that all voices are heard. I could go on, but I definitely agree that we want all voices heard in our system. We want all races to feel equal. And I am not saying today as a commentator that all white people are racist, or that we have to go into a conversation in our schools presuming that folks are racist. However, this bill does to me validate that even in our own state of North Carolina, when the bill has no chances of passing, why would Republicans bring such a bill to the floor? And how can this kind of situation be stopped? Because At the end of the day, as I've said time and time again, there's no one-stop cure for racism, but we know bias exists. And what it takes is a common sense community effort to solve these problems together. I don't believe the Republicans are solving anything in North Carolina by offering a bill that's implying that our country has never been racist. When we brought slaves and blacks here on slave ships, shackled up in chains, when there's been redlining and gerrymandering, when we know that the founders of our country did own slaves, I think it's important for the future of our country to be honest with our children that this country had racism, that it was accepted, and that we can do better as a nation and show the rest of the world that we truly are a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, and that all men and women are created equal. More to come on this interesting debate in North Carolina on a bill limiting what you can and cannot say about race and sex in our state. Let's get to work. Today we have with us Nick Paladiva, soccer star, and I thought today's show we would begin, uh, you know, continuing our talk about disruption in American democracy and the extremes of each party. And we're going to talk a little about today and the vote this afternoon under her replacement. But even in our own state of North Carolina, Nick, we made national news on AP News on the bill that basically limits what you can say about race and implying that we should just go into our schools and say that we've never been a racist country. The point I was trying to make, and I want you to comment on this bill today, is that the governor can veto it, so it has no legs, but they're doing it anyway. What are your thoughts, Nick, about this issue?
Steve, I'm glad you asked because I happen to have a copy of the bill right in front of me. Here it is, House Bill 324.
Wonderful.
And I read it very carefully. And the media has totally misscrewed this completely. And what they're doing is they're race baiting the entire media out there, which is disgusting to see what they're doing out there. In other words, the media, made this an issue. The bill is not written that way. And so I encourage everybody to forget whatever you saw on television, forget what you ever heard in the media. Instead, here's what you need to do. Go pull House Bill 324 and read it. Okay, it doesn't say anything that the media says it says. Nothing that the media says it says. This is all created, I hate to say it, what Trump said is correct. This is fake news. Okay, now, with that in mind, because I read through the whole section, there's a couple sections that are what I call ambiguous. By the way, it was if you want to say something bad about it, it was poorly written. There's no examples. It will look like a high school student wrote it. And no examples is really bad. In other words, what are we talking about here? So the only thing I could think of what the media was trying to grasp is subsection D, which says things that are fairly interesting out there. It goes that the belief that the United States is a meritocracy is racist or sexist or is created by a member of a particular race or sex to oppress members of another race or sex. What they're doing, Steve, is they're misconstruing that or interpreting that to be all the stuff that you just said. And then they're blasting it out there like that's what it says. That's not what it says. What I read is what it says. But unfortunately, it's so poorly written that anybody can construe it any way you want to. So the problem I had with the bill as an attorney is that this was written by a high school student and thrown out there and was voted on. The Republicans passed it by a huge majority. Now it goes to the Senate in North Carolina. Come on, guys, you can do better than that. And the other thing is it didn't show examples. Okay, what does it mean by all this stuff? There's no examples. There's no regulations attached. Do you know there's even no enforcement provisions in it at all? In other words, if you violate it, what happens to you? Do you lose your job as a teacher? So like I said, from just a pure draftsmanship standpoint, I thought North Carolina was better than that. Don't you have good universities here? Isn't UNC and Duke, don't they have good law schools here? Are you guys this bad and this poor at law that you promulgate trash like this? Now, but when you look at some of the other things, here's what it says. Now I'm reading from the text. It goes, for purposes of section, it says the General Assembly finds recognizes the equality and rights of persons. Therefore, it's the intent of the General Assembly that students, teachers, administrators, and other school employees respect the dignity of others. What's wrong with that? Acknowledge the rights of others to express different opinions. What's wrong with that? Foster and defend intellectual honesty. What's wrong with that? Freedom of inquiry and instruction and freedom of speech and association. What's wrong with that? Where did the media get off on creating all this garbage that we're listening to about the state of North Carolina? I'm sorry. We have a big media problem in the United States. No one reads the bloody bill. So, like I said, rather than listen to all the garbage that's out there, which is promulgated unfortunately, by the party I'm a member of, the Democratic Party, they need to be slapped by this one. Okay, read the bloody bill. It's House Bill 324. I encourage everybody to read the bill and then come to your own conclusion. My conclusion is that other than poor draftsmanship, there's nothing wrong with what they did. And we go back to this big bipartisan, this big groupthink with the Democrats, whether it came from the Republicans, it's got to be wrong. And I totally disagree. Sasha, I don't know what your thoughts are. You had to live in Russia for a while. I don't know if they had this problem where what was promoted, what was printed, and what the media says are two different things. I don't think you have the problem in Russia because Pravda, they all say the same bloody things, whatever Putin wants them to say.
I must admit one thing, that in Russia, no bills are written poorly. They're written masterpieces. And of course, in the country of Leo Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, and Pushkin, you might expect that.
Yeah.
The only things when they're written poorly, it's on purpose. Sometimes they're doing on purpose to create ambiguity and to really feel out what this fraction is thinking about this or other fractions, but all these fractions are Putin's anyway. So it's kind of coming to its logical end. Now, Nick, I would like to understand what is not, whether it's poorly written or not so poorly, and what Democrats have to do with all that. What is the purpose of that bill? What exactly that bill is trying to accomplish?
Yeah, it's a good question. North Carolina does that a lot. They create problems when there are none. I mean,
but Sasha, that's a great point. That's what I agree with Nick that sometimes the media pounces on things, but it's exactly my point. What would be the motivation of introducing legislation like this with no chance of passing because you have a Democratic governor, Roy Cooper, who can veto it, right? That's the thing that I don't understand. What are they trying to say? I mean,
okay. Here, and again, the thing is, unfortunately, we don't have anybody on the side, so I can only argue from what I've seen that their arguments are. Here's what they're trying to say, Steve, out there. I believe, that there's a movement out there that wants to do this, that, well, you're responsible for slavery because you're a white person. In other words, degrading the white people, and that because they're responsible because their ancestors may have had slaves. There's a movement out there, I guess, to other than that, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not involved. I don't have a dog in this race, so I don't know. But North Carolina is notorious, at least in the legislature. Remember the bathroom bill, to create problems when there are none. And I've seen that even in I sit on my homeowners association board. Okay, so it's a quasi-government type of entity. You know what I mean? And we were going to pass a bill to limit lighting. And they wanted huge regulations. I said, look, we don't have any lighting problems in the community. Why do you want to pass a bill to regulate all the people's lights? Well, we just have to have a bill, So what happens in North Carolina, it's very unfortunate. They didn't have an issue with transgender people using bathrooms. So what they did is they created a bill to create the issue. So we don't have an issue here that I'm aware of. And this thing doesn't directly address any issue that I'm aware of. So but it is racially oriented. So what they did is they created an issue, and they created the issue mainly because of some of the ambiguous language that takes place. But I encourage everybody, I show on the banner, rather than listening to me, what my opinion is, or Steve, or the media for certain, who got this all wrong, go to the internet, go to North Carolina House Bill 324 and read it yourself, and then come to your own conclusion. It's the source bill. I didn't see anything what the media said it said in there. It doesn't exist.
No,
Okay.
I mean, yeah, I think,
I'm willing to be wrong. If you can show it what the media is there, I'm good.
Nick, I want you to appreciate one thing, that people today can't read. Even if they know how to read, they still don't read. Why? They have a bunch of influencers on internet. Somebody like Ben Shapiro and some other wonderful propagandists who are selling all kind of stuff. And in order to please their audience, they're coming with all kind of obscure theories, and they will interpret this bill or some other bills or so on.
Right.
So don't expect people to start Google it and read it.
I heard the same thing that Steve did, because I got the News Observer, which is our local rag, and they said you can't teach racism in school. I heard the same thing all over the place, and I'm going, wow, that's amazing. Are the people in North Carolina legislature that stupid to put that in a bill? So I went to pull the bill, and it doesn't say it. It's not in there at all. I challenge anybody listening to this to show me where it says all this stuff the media says it in. So I got lied to big time by our media here. What a surprise, And they do this here, unfortunately, today all the time, Sasha. There was a time that the media had some respect. In other words, they would go to sources, they'd have respect, they'd be professional. But see, being professional doesn't sell. So the thing is, they needed something to sell. So what they did is and we used this on Lawyers Den. So we went over this whole thing last night. I was going like, are you kidding me? That this is what the bill says. It has nothing to do with the media says it says, but then it incites people. Think about it. Let's change. The bill didn't say it. So what we'll do is we'll say the bill said it, that you can't teach racism in North Carolina schools. Oh no, that's wrong. I can't believe North Carolina legislature passed that. Okay. Oh boy, they're horrible. The Republicans are horrible. Look what they're doing. Okay. And that's what the talk of the town is out here. But that's not what it said. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, minor inconvenience,
It's not what it says. It's what influencers will sell their people who religiously follow them on Instagram, on Facebook, on Google.
I challenge anybody in the media and anybody watching this program to go read House Bill 324 and show me where it says what the media says it says.
There will be zero takers.
That's because there'll be zero takers because what? They don't know how to read.
But I think
well, there are some people who don't know how to read, some people who know how to read, but they don't want to read, especially if they will be already predisposed that this is something against what they believe. I think that bill is either it help the party to be reelected or raise trillions of dollars. Oh, if it accomplishes even only one of those two things, it's good enough.
Yeah, and the sad part is that you see this take place a lot in legal practice too, Sasha. Usually when I'm fighting the Internal Revenue Service, they'll send me a statement. Here's the facts. Here's the law. Now I'm an idiot, so I go back and read the law to see what it exactly says. And on every audit I've done, the law never said that. So I go back to them and I say, look, it's not in the code. It's not in the regs. This is what it says. I quote what exactly it is. I'm kind of shocked because this isn't high-level reading skills we're talking about, Sasha. I post the bill there. Everybody can now read the bloody bill. But please do not listen to what they're telling you in the media, because I listened to it and I was going like, wow, this has got to be something wrong. Are you kidding me? This is another stupid bathroom bill by North Carolina. And that's not what it says. It does have some extremely ambiguous language in it that you could construe it that direction. It also does have no examples. Like I said, it's poorly written, but if you read a lot of it, it says what, would be normal.
Nick, most of the people, they don't have even enough attention span to actually read it from beginning to the end. They just can't. They can't concentrate. They can't. You know what? They'd rather probably run a marathon than to read the bill, because a marathon.
It's 2 pages. Sasha, this isn't the bills I read from our friends at the IRS. The last one I got was a fiduciary bill. It was 1,032 pages. Usually I get a 300-page reg. This is 2 bloody pages.
Well, first of all, I think what I was trying to say in my commentary, and I wanted to have some nice debate about this, is I first of all, and as I said in my remarks, I don't think we should ever imply that, like Nick, you're white and you're a racist, and I'm going into that presumption from the first time we've met, even though we're gonna have to meet in person soon because now we have no excuse because we don't have to wear masks anymore. We'll talk about that too. We're getting back to a new normal.
There you go.
Why are we doing? It's like, but the point I was trying to make is that by not talking about race, by just acting like everything is okay, we're not doing anything to solve the problem. And I think that's what the representatives are saying. The media might have sensationalized it, but Representative Gilliard has said the best way to reproduce history is to not talk about it. Okay? So I don't understand. I disagree with State Superintendent Kathy Truitt that says this is a common sense solution. I actually disagree with her. I think this is absolutely not common sense. And I think that, this is about having the ability to have an open and honest conversation. How can you look a child in the eye and say that there was not racism in America? That, we have to write history, teach history the way it happened. That's what I think. So I don't understand. Like Sasha Starr said, what's the purpose of this legislation then? How is it getting us any closer to addressing the fact that we have racial bias in America?
I mean, but see, that's a good question. And so the thing is, all I can do is go to the preamble, and this is what it says: an act to demonstrate the General Assembly's intent that student, teachers, administrators, and other school employees recognize that equality and rights of all persons, and to prohibit public school units from promoting certain concepts are contrary to that intent. Of course, that doesn't tell you anything. So you have to go read down below. The General Assembly finds that Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution of the state recognize the equality and rights of all persons. Therefore, it is the intent, this is what they're saying, not me, of the General Assembly that students, teachers, and administrators and other school employees respect the dignity of others, acknowledge the rights of others to express differing opinions, and foster and defend intellectual honesty, freedom of inquiry and instruction, and freedom of speech and association. That's what it says. Show me where it says what people are saying it says. Okay, show me it says anything other than that. That's the intent. So now you guys know the intent. Whether they accomplished the intent or not, I don't know. That was the intent.
Yeah, I guess but anyway, we could go all day on this issue. I think my point is that what is the underlying purpose of the legislation? That's what my biggest concern is.
What is purpose, not underlying purpose? What is
what's the purpose?
Everything what you read so far doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's just the same thing.
See, here's the other problem I have with it. Okay, when we're addressing issues like that, we're not addressing the real issues of the problems of this country. Okay, one of it, of course, is our education system in general. What we teach. In other words, we don't teach STEM courses. In other words, where's robotics 1, robotics 2, robotics 3? I don't see those courses being taught. We don't see. I'm getting a lot of echo.
Yeah, there's some echo there, and I heard y'all talking about robots and things along those lines.
In other words, Mark, something that will actually have our kids get jobs at the industry of the future. Okay.
I actually have something that's interested along those same lines for you. I'm glad that I popped in at the right time and everything. And by the way, I'm sorry I'm running late, but Brother Mike was having a very powerful discussion on the other show. He's actually he's got a great wrapping it up because he was having a conversation with a gentleman from the Northeast about suicide. So it was a very powerful conversation. Go back and check it out. It was a very powerful addition. This man is a 2-time suicide survivor. There was Brother Mike's guest and everything. And then I also brought up a family friend whose mom had passed away recently, but he died back in the late 90s of suicide. And you may have heard of him, Nick. It was a guy named Mikey that was over there at Carolina Friends, and they had the Mikey Fund for about 20 years here in North Carolina that was dealing with that issue. And I knew Nayo, his mom, and all of that. So it was a powerful issue and everything. But what I was going to bring up to you, which I was glad because I was going to bring this up ever since I saw the article yesterday, was I have bad news for some people in your profession. Are you ready for it?
We're ready for bad news because we.
Are you ready for bad news in the legal profession?
Yeah.
But there was a gentleman who is apparently a top legal expert in everything, and he has said that by the year 2022, because they are faster, that it looks like AI is coming to the legal profession. So he's of the opinion that AI is coming because it's faster, and therefore, like, you know, all those people that have got those great jobs as legal aides, as paralegals, as a number of the other fields, they may be out of work because this is a man that runs like this whole legal expert and everything. I think he's a lawyer himself. And he said that, you know, AI is on its way and it's coming to get some of your legal profession people's jobs. So it looks like y'all are in deep trouble because he said that by 2022, that's going to happen. And there's going to be a whole lot of out of work paralegals, legal aides, legal secretaries, a number of those other folks. And maybe even, I know a couple of days ago we were talking about judges, but, you know, instead of having 100 judges, the AI may be the Supreme Court. So he didn't go that far.
That would be good because they probably make better decisions than these poor humans, and hopefully they can learn to draft documents and interpret documents. Here's the problem I have because I got the same report that Steve did, that this House bill won't allow you to teach racism.
Yeah, but Mark, that's the issue with the day. Let's ask Mark.
Okay, Mark, but the thing is, I read the House bill. As a matter of fact, no, I read it. Here it is, and I put it down there for everyone else to read it. House Bill 324. Here's the problem. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that anywhere. It's a 2-page bill. Anybody can read it. It doesn't say that anyway. Well, what does it say? Okay, and I've read that over and over again on this thing. It says this, Mark. The General Assembly finds Article 1 of the Constitution recognizes the equality and rights of all persons. Hereby, the intent of the General Assembly that student teachers, administrators, and other school employees respect the dignity of others, acknowledge the rights of others to express differing opinions, foster and defend intellectual honesty, freedom of inquiry and instruction, freedom of speech and association. What's wrong with that? Okay, now as you read further on, you'll see some stuff that could be construed, but you really have to go out far to construe it to what the press said it said. It doesn't say that. So I posted it down the banner. Anybody's free to read it. If you can find anything in here that says what the press says, that you can't teach racism in the schools in North Carolina, show it to me. It doesn't say it.
Mark, what is your thought about this? So, Mark, here's my thought about it real quickly before I hand it over to you. My thought is that I feel like this is an example of what we talked about yesterday, the extremes or conservatives of the party playing to their base. Because if this bill doesn't have a clear purpose, and we are in the middle of racial turmoil in America, why would we want to say that, even if we're not saying that we want, I agree with the bill's language, we want to go into a presumption that we're all equal, we respect all views, and I've always believed that. But to say that you can't, as a teacher, say that America was a racist country, how does that help our conversation? And isn't it an example of the problem that we've had with playing to the extremes of each party? Right? Which what I said, Liz Cheney's ouster was actually good because now she's going to be an option for Republicans. Rather than you supporting Trump, the Republicans may have another option. Right? What's your opinion about this bill?
Well, like I said, I'm not a big fan of that particular bill. I hear what Nick is saying, and I was actually wondering that myself because definitely it doesn't seem like it's definitely saying anything that you can't teach about race and things along those lines. But at the same time, you know, critical race theory oftentimes talks about, and that's what it's really targeting, is critical race theory, is talking about the importance of race and within the context of history and things of that nature. And you can't say that America hasn't had some racial issues throughout its history. I mean, shucks, slavery was way back in the 1800s and things of that nature and all of that. And definitely even from the founding areas, race played a part when the English came here and there were people already here that were of Native American ancestry. And definitely a lot of those wound up getting pushed into reservations and pushed into other parts of society. And a lot of them were flat out murdered. So definitely race has been a issue throughout. We can even go back to the construction of the railroads and how the Asian Americans played a significant part in that. And that's just three examples of race in general that should be discussed. So my issue is if it's a push to try to get that conversation from not happening, then it becomes an issue. But like I said, sometimes you can bring something into law because you may have other intent and you just bring it into the law the way that you're able to get it in there, and then you kind of backdoor some of your plans as well. So that's my fear, is that this can be a backdoor way to stop the conversations, or to at least curtail the conversations. And these are conversations that need to be had on a regular basis. Do I believe that everybody that is a 21st century European American has a direct influence on my own life and things of that nature, or that their ancestors are causing them to have their attitudes? No, I wouldn't go that far and everything. But at the same time, we have to understand the history of American society and race and class. We've talked about classism on this show as well. Definitely play an important part in that conversation. So I don't know that you can have a conversation without dealing with some aspects of critical race theory. So that's really what the attack is an attack against critical race theory.
We have some viewers coming in from Brazil, and they wanted us to talk about legalizing weed in the United States. I think what the
Medical
position,
marijuana,
right?
yeah.
Critical marijuana. I think critically marijuana is actually outlawed still in the federal, but it's legal in the states. And go
Yes.
figure that one. Go figure that one out. That just shows we can't get our act together.
Person in Brazil calling in, just to let you know that one of the reasons there are medical uses of marijuana. So I know that the former governor, Bev Perdue's son, Jared Perdue, I think he has a company, a startup, where he's focusing on cannabis and medical uses of marijuana. But I do think that there are some legislators in North Carolina that believe that by legalizing marijuana, you would reduce criminal rates. So a lot of the prisoners, or people that are getting incarcerated with marijuana in their car, you could reduce, prison.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. They should decriminalize it. I thought they should have done that 30 years ago, Steve. I mean, this is an atrocity that takes place that creates criminals when there shouldn't be any. And it's very expensive to play this stupid war on drugs. And drugs in general should be a health issue, not a crime issue. And so what happens, if you want to know something that's racist to the black community, but also a certain amount of the white community, is this whole crazy war on drugs. It's very damaging. It should be a health issue. Mm-hmm. There should not be criminalization on it. These are people that need help. They're self-medicating. And what it does, it promotes crime. It doesn't stop crime. So Nancy Reagan was wrong, completely wrong, about this war on drugs. There should not be a war on drugs. It should be treated as a health issue from day one. And we're wrong on this issue for 30 bloody years. Why are we wrong on it? I don't know. But the thing is,
there is one aspect of it that drug pushers, they don't pay taxes.
Well, yeah. Well, that's another reason.
This is ugliest part of all these issues. If they would pay taxes, there wouldn't be any problem. But they don't, as I know.
Yeah. Well, in Colorado, when they made it legal, they made them pay taxes. And then they used the tax money to help address the underlying issue, which is a health issue. In other words, manic depressives take this stuff. People that are in pain take this stuff. It's a health issue, Sasha. Okay, and the thing is, they're using the tax revenue. They're doing the right thing in Colorado to use it to address the underlying health issues. But that's not what's happening around the country. What they're doing around the country is they're making a crime issue. We're going to arrest you. We're going to shoot you. We're going to kill you. It's insane. And we can just get rid of that whole thing by changing it to where it belongs, which belongs in the health court systems, or they call them even drug courts, and not have it in the criminal courts. So to me, it's an easy solution to find. Yet there's this big polarization that is out there. It's like we can't figure this one out. Well,
the polarization is. But Nick, the polarization is existing on all levels. It's even existing on our local level. We just had a vote yesterday on Thursday oust our local, meaning Durham, North Carolina county manager, and it was strictly down race line. So the vote was 3-2 to oust the county manager. And as a matter of fact, Commissioner Barnes said, sitting before me, I see a rope, a knot, and a tree, and I have nothing else to say. And Brenda Howerton, who's a very vocal advocate in the community and everything, said, what I'm left with is a knee on the neck of a black man. So like I said, some people might be saying that it was because of his performance and things of that nature, but the vote was clearly along race lines. So even that is something that is going on right now on our local level. So that's definitely something that's going to be resonating, or probably could even impact their upcoming election. So it's going to be resonating for years ahead, and it's been in the news for a while. Some of our activists in the community, like Reverend Carl Kinney, have even been bringing it up on their social media and on their own individual sites and blogs and things of that nature. So it's an issue that even happens in a town that's fairly racially diverse, like Durham.
Right, like Durham. Yeah, right. So the thing is, well, I'm just kind of shocked that we're 30 years into drugs being a criminal, not a health issue. You'd think the United States of America, that has the most expensive health system in the world, would have figured this out by now, but we haven't. Colorado did, California did, but still federally, it's illegal. And frankly, it's created legal problems for some of my clients. And I'm fighting cases on that right now, saying, guys, you're on the wrong side of this. You're on the wrong side of history. But there are people in the federal government that still believe, well, it's the law, so we're going to enforce it. I tell them to go stick it. Of course, they don't like hearing that one. So that's got to be one of my answers I got to do again today. It's a bit of a problem when you're looking at that, because we're sitting on the wrong side of that one. And history will demonstrate we're on the wrong side of that one also.
Yes. Well, so I want to bring up the race issue today because I think it's a continued discussion of disruption in American democracy. And the point I was trying to make is we're seeing a trend of, President Biden called for unity in America when he was sworn in as our 46th president. But we're seeing election laws in Georgia. We're seeing laws in North Carolina like this. We're seeing the Republican Party might be a historic movement in American democracy. The ouster of Liz Cheney, now rumors of Liz Cheney, she has said she will run again. When asked by Savannah Guthrie yesterday, would she run for president or not, she didn't deny the question. Very interesting. The rumor on the street is that Dick Cheney always wanted to be president, and he really was the president for 8 years when he was the vice president for George W. Bush. But a heartbeat away as the vice president, but the finger on the pulse on everything, a lot of power. But I think that the point I was trying to make is that the extremes are pushing agendas, which may not even have a reason to pass, but they're playing to their base. Because somebody asked me the other day, why would the Republicans bring a bill in North Carolina if it didn't have a passing ability to pass? Well, the reason is they got to get reelected. They've got to win a primary, right? So what do? You go and you play to that base, so you get elected. So we'll continue to have this discussion. At the end of the day, I think it's good to have more options in our system, more choice, right? And Nick, you've been saying this all along.
Yeah, see, the Republican Party that sits in Congress are a bunch of wimps. I mean, they have no leadership, they have no charisma, they have no chutzpah at all. I mean, to oust Liz Cheney, who's saying the right thing, by the way, that Trump is promulgating a big lie, and they oust her, just shows how weak they really are in Congress, how weak the Republican Party really is nationwide, how absent they are of any form of leadership whatsoever, and how low that party has really gone to. And that's my thoughts. The Republican Party, they really absolutely suck. And the thing, notice I'm an equal opportunity disser, Steve. Now it's smash the Republican Party, but it's true. The thing is, she was speaking up for truth against power, and of course she lost. But it just really shows how low that Tea Party has become. It's not even a Republican Party anymore. It's a Tea Party. And so the thing is, hopefully they drown in their own tea and they stew in their own juices. I don't think they're going to get anywhere with that approach, but it is what it is. But if you think about it, okay, let's say Trump doesn't run. Who's the next best person in the Republican Party?
Yeah,
who's going to raise money? Sasha goes, well, Trump will raise money. What about the rest of them?
It's going to be hard. That's the reason they need him as a nominee, because otherwise Otherwise, it'll be.
Can you believe it? In a population of 330 million people, you have a bunch of Republican congressmen and senators. They're all worthless. That's horrible. You know that they have no charisma whatsoever. They have no chutzpah whatsoever. So they have to go to Trump. You know, who's frankly, last time I saw, he's a sleazy real estate salesman and a talk show.
There's no doubt that that's what he is.
You know, is that the best you guys could do? Okay, so
But are you ready for the boll weevil move? And what I'm calling the boll weevil move is them putting on to what they may consider, and notice I said that they may consider, I don't consider it this, but what they may consider two moderate minorities, because I'm thinking that it's possible that they may try to put together what could be the Nikki Haley, Tim Scott ticket. And that would be interesting because both of them would be from one state, but you know, that did kind of work back in the Jefferson days and everything. I don't know that it would work now, but it would be interesting. And both of them are considered relatively moderate considered to some of the other forces that are out there. But
there was an article in National News about if Kamala were to run, she would Roy Cooper, governor of North Carolina, top of the list. Governor Coops. Coops, give him a call. He could be in the White House. Go ahead.
What I hear,
Joe says he's going to do it for 4 more years, but man, he's going to be well into his 80s.
Yeah, he looks pretty good.
It looks to me that the United States slowly is moving in the direction of its north neighbor, Canada. Number one issue, Canada has not 2, but 3 major parties. Although one of them, NDP, New Democratic Party, is always a loser, but they're a dignified loser. They're always present in all the discussions, and they say something occasionally, and they know that they're losers. Even in one of the debate when Stephen Harper was still a president, so the leader of New Democratic Party, NDP, he was asked a question, and he was started to say what he's promising to do once he will be a president or so on. And Harper's response was, I envy a person who can promise so much because he'll never be in a position to deliver all his promises. I really envy this man. Now about marijuana, it's legalized in Canada now for 2 years, from what I remember. And you know what? Nothing terrible is happening. It's now you have a choice. You can approach your friendly drug pusher, buy from him, or you can go to legal stores actually to buy it there. And there's a lot of productions of marijuana, medical use, or whatever in different parts.
Sasha, just really quickly, I wanted to jump in on that because I had the privilege about a month and a half, maybe about a month and a half ago, to have a guest on that is involved in that industry from Canada, involved in the cannabis industry. And one of the things they talked about was, yes, it's legal in Canada. Yes, they were glad that it was legal in Canada. But apparently, and that's the fear even here in the States, it pushed out a lot of people that were small business owners and even some minority business owners, because as soon as it became legal, the folks in the real estate industry, the folks in law, the folks in a number of corporate America were like, hey, wait a minute, this is a corporate dollar maker, so therefore we need to go into the industry. And they pushed out the small folks and things of that nature. At least that's what this particular person told me she observed, and I believe she was in Ottawa, or one of the places to the west of you and all of that. But definitely that's one of the things that she observed. I was just wondering, had you noticed that as well, that, you know, because it became legal, corporate Canada, I can't say corporate America, but corporate Canada came in there and scooped in and was like, hey, it's legal. We need to take it on as a regular industry.
That actually happened in Colorado. We represented a company that Mark was a big company that basically pushed out all the small companies. I mean, this is something that we have to teach in our schools. I know everybody wants to learn critical race theory, but let me tell you something. People really have to understand corporate law and how corporations behave, because that'll make a big difference in how well they live more than critical race theory will. There's only so many jobs in critical race theory. There's a lot of them in corporations. And this is one reason you have to go to Sasha's show, Investing with Sasha. You want to be part of that group, In other words, and you got to think as these companies think. Otherwise, you're right. They're going to the big corporations will come in and they'll push you out. They did that in Las Vegas. Remember, we had the mafia was controlling all these little Italian things, and big corporate America came in and just took over the whole city. And that you could say that's a problem, but some cases you got to figure out how to join them, work with them, because it'll be coming. Yeah, I agree.
But I do remember the last 2.5 minutes of the movie Casino. Remember what happened when they destroy all those old casinos and the new corporate America moved in, and they used fantastically great music of Johann Sebastian Bach, the finale of Passion of St. Matthew. So it's phenomenal scene, and corporate America moved in because there are opportunities. So why don't you expect that the corporate Canada or America, for that reason, as in Colorado, would ignore that market and say, oh yeah, you little mom and pop, continue to operate, don't pay taxes, be wealthy and healthy, and we love you, and so on. It's not gonna happen.
Right.
Not.
Right. Well, what they do is they come in with their machinery and they try to scale everything. So the thing is, in other words, everything becomes uniform. It becomes scaled. They come in with marketing dollars. They come in with they're basically their corporate machinery. And yes, I believe that would also happen. That drives the small and paw businesses out. But still, this 50% of the people in the United States work for small businesses. In other words, it's not the large employers. Most people actually work for these small corporations.
Right.
And unfortunately, we don't have a lot of policies to support them. See, what we need to do is create more policies to support these small corporations, as opposed to our policies are supported by large corporations who also have the budgets to go to Washington, D.C. and lobby for bills that are in their favor. Or even Mark in Raleigh, they go to Raleigh to lobby.
They go to the lobby the state legislators. Nick, that actually raises an interesting question, and I'm sure our audience may be interested to hear everybody else's opinions as to whether this is a good idea. Now, say that corporate America is predominantly European American and predominantly definitely elite in terms of their money and things of that nature. And let's say that the majority of the small dealers or small farms and everything are poor. We won't even go in race, but they're poor, and there may be some that are minority based and everything. Should, as this new industry is growing, should there be a set aside program for minority cannabis growers? So, as a legal expert, what do you think about a set aside program for minorities in the cannabis industry, where we set aside maybe 10 to 15 or 20% of the business, as we've done for other affirmative action programs, to make sure that a certain amount of the population is being represented in this new burgeoning cannabis industry? Because that's what this person was talking about. And actually, the young lady was a European American, but she was talking about the fact that it was pushing out a lot of the minority growers. So when corporate America came in. So what do y'all think about the idea of a set aside program?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, there should be some more. There should be basically more equitable distribution, Mark. I mean, that's one of the real problems that this country has that is not addressed. Media doesn't want to address the inequitable financial distribution of wealth in this country. It's so skewed toward the 1% that, I mean, can you imagine a country right now where 1% has 70% of all financial assets in the country, and then 99% split the other 30, and the bottom 50% have next to zero? I mean, and this has been going on for the last gosh knows how many decades, since Reagan decided he wanted to lower the corporate tax rates and the individual tax rates on the wealthiest Americans, and he imposed them on the poorest Americans by what they call the payroll tax. Right. Everybody talks about how bad the poll tax was. Mark, try the payroll tax. Now,
the payroll tax has definitely got some serious issues and all of that.
It's very regressive, but just explain to the audience how it works. If you go out and you work for a living, 15.3% from $1 goes to pay for Social Security and Medicare, 15.3. And you go, no, it's only 6.2. I saw that on my statement. No. Your employer picked up the other 6.2 and the 1.45 and it's 15.3. But here's what they don't know, and this thing always gets me. Once you make more than 137,900, you no longer pay the Social Security end of it, which is 12.4%. It disappears. So for high income taxpayers, they don't pay that 15.3%. This is what Warren Buffett was trying to explain to everybody, but you didn't get it. Because what happens, it's called a cap. And the cap still exists today, and it's lifted for high income taxpayers. When I told my employees this years ago, they were stunned. They go, "Are you kidding me?" And I said, "You guys didn't know that?" No. I said, "How come you don't know that?" Then I just realized they've never made more than 137,900 in their lives. So because they never made that much, they didn't know that I don't have to pay the tax from there on in because they've
never made anywhere near that. I'm not even made
exactly.
anywhere near that.
But see, the thing is, it's wrong, Mark. What happens is that if you're making $1 million a year, you don't pay that tax. If you're making $500,000 a year, you don't pay it. It's a simple stroke of the pen that your friend Joe Biden has to do, and he has to get Congress to agree to it. Of course, this could be a hard one to lift the cap, and they need to lift the cap for another reason. Our Social Security system's running out of money. Hello. Okay. And one way to do it is lift the cap. Why is it that why do we tell people they're making over 137,900? You get to pay less in taxes than a guy making 30,000 or 50,000.
Absolutely.
No, and it's wrong today. It's wrong 10 years from now. I mean, it's just wrong, buddy.
I've got to enter my door and everything, but I'm actually going to get ready to go off camera and answer the door. But before I do that, I was getting ready to say really quickly that I've got a new industry that folks may be interested in as well, which is the new industry is the industry of the fact that, because of everything going on in the world, and this is my chance to bring levity and everything, the pajama industry is definitely a big industry now because everybody's having to buy pajamas and all of that because none of us are working from offices. We're working from homes and all of that. So I'm going to jump off the camera and y'all can share a little bit of my levity moment with that and all, but I'll be right back.
I'm going to have to close out a little bit early today because I've got an 11 o'clock call that I've got to get ready for. But a couple of things is we didn't talk about the gas shortages. President Biden is saying that the gas shortages should be over by the end of the weekend for the Colonial Pipeline. It's been a real nightmare. Prices going up here in North Carolina. Lines are really long. I'm at a half tank, a little bit below a half tank. So I'm going to try to ride it out until tomorrow, Sunday. Israeli airstrikes continue on the Gaza Strip. 69 Palestinians dead. 16 of those are children. Turmoil in the Middle East and, onward and upward, right? Although the only light at the end of the tunnel is the fact that we don't have to wear masks anymore in the U.S. indoors. And it looks like much of the restrictions, Nick, are being lifted in North Carolina. So maybe we are going to be able to gather in larger groups soon in North Carolina. And looks like COVID-19 for us maybe not over, but at least the way we've been living may be over. We might be getting back to having a normal life. I don't know what to do with myself.
Yeah. I would like to add something about Israel's situation that Benjamin Netanyahu made an ultimatum that all the rockets from Gaza or elsewhere against Israel must stop in the next 24 hours. Probably it's already less, the 24 left. And if not, then Israel moves its force, full force, tanks, artillery, everything against Gaza. And whatever parts of the Gaza Israel will overtake will belong to Israel from now on until next 5,000 years. So it's not just local uprising in Lod that some people were oppressed and some people not so oppressed. It's garbage. It's just a systematic emboldened Hamas attacks against Israel, including Israeli Arabs as well, they will definitely pay for it. There is no excuse to left it unpunished, and the punishment will be very, very serious. And he stopped instead of. You see, the problem is that they are using children to protect themselves as the mass management, or how you want to say it.
What you just told me, Sasha, is the Middle East is going to be the big part of our show next week.
Yeah, the Middle East is going to be a big part of the show. There's no doubt about that and everything. I'm actually going to bounce. That was actually our good buddy, Zach, who was coming by and letting me know that, guess what, Steve, they're giving away free food. So I guess I better go get some of that free food, because Zach was knocking on the door and banging to let me know that somehow at our apartment complex, free food is being given away. So I need to go check on that and everything.
I'm going to hand the reins over to Nick P.O.D to close out the show today. But I wanted to thank everybody for Pod TV, our first week as Pod TV. It's been exciting. We've had some really good shows. We're going to be inviting some guests as we prepare to begin for a early summer in June. And Nick, you can close out with what we're going to talk about. But I mean, at the end of the day, lots of little mini plots going on. Light at the end of the tunnel. The big crisis globally is still India, with about 4,000 people dying a day, but $100 million. Yeah, but we're going to talk next week about the aid for U.S. providing. There is a lot of aid that's going to India. There are organizations that we can contribute to give oxygen generators to India, which is the biggest problem. You can go to Sayway International, BAPSCharities.org, Desai Foundation, just to name a few. We'll be talking about those next week. And where the light and love of our hearts will always lift us out of the darkness. So we pray for anyone suffering, Ankit and his family, anyone that's lost a loved one. And, I'll close out with Fareed Zakaria's compelling message, a journalist. We all, he's sort of like my hero in journalism, a Muslim from India who his mother, Fatima Zakaria, was a famous journalist. And in a live eulogy that he gave on his show, GPS, which brought me to tears, he talked about the influence of his mother and how immigration was a positive thing and what he could do for in America. But how often we forget that immigration is also the distance. Sasha has been an immigrant. We've had other immigrants on the show. Many of them live in Morrisville. And how awful would it be to not be able to say goodbye to your mother? And Fareed Zakaria, we saw the emotion in his eyes. He thanked his mom, but he said he felt a distance as an immigrant in America that he never felt in so long, from the days when he left a weeping mother who left her children to come to a better country. So that to me was a really striking message, and something that I'm seeing on the ground right here in Morrisville and Cary, with hundreds and hundreds of Indians having to have funerals for their parents without a cremation, no last rites.
Yeah.
Right. We pray for you, and you're not alone.
Right? Yeah, no doubt. We definitely pray for folks, and it looks like we've only got about a minute to go, and I'm actually getting ready to go grab that food. But just really quickly, as I was saying when I first popped in, and maybe this is how Nick can go out, I did find that the person I was talking about that was saying that AI is coming for the legal industry is Robert Simmons, and he's the co-founder of the Justice Headquarters and also the co-founder of the Simmons, the founder of the Justice Headquarters and the co-founder of the Simmons Law Group. But he's talking about the ways that technology has changed the legal industry, and he says that, of course, y'all have seen massive changes, and he says no way that AI is not coming to get your industry. So he says that, of course, a lot of y'all lawyers are using Zoom and Google Meet, but when people started working from homes, y'all started doing even more and more. And he says that technology has aided them in various aspects of their business, and that he's definitely thinking that AI will become a part of the legal industry in the coming years. An algorithm working on AI, we will need to go through 10,000 legal documents of high quality in order to be able to create them on its own. So like I said, I think that some folks in your profession might be in trouble. So it looks like AI is coming to get your job.
Oops, I better.
I'm going to let you close us out,
okay.
Nick, today.
All right.
That's okay. So I won't
I'm going to close
you
out.
end the broadcast. You close out.
No problem.
Guys, have a great weekend.
You too.
See you
all right.
Monday.
We'll see you next week.
I'm finally getting used to saying it. Pod TV.
Yeah, Pod TV. All right. We'll see you.